I stared out the airplane window as the lights of the city below flickered like dying embers, my body sinking deeper into the stiff seat as exhaustion pulled at me from all sides. 4 days. 4 endless days in Chicago helping my sister recover from major spinal surgery, the kind of procedure that makes you confront mortality in ways you're never ready for. But she made it through. The surgeons were optimistic. And despite the fatigue hitting me like a freight train, I felt relief for the first time all week. All I wanted now was to get home. Home to Linda, my wife of 37 years. My wife who had always been unstoppable until that stupid fall last month. One slip on wet pavement outside the grocery store, and suddenly she needed help getting up the stairs, needed a walker to stay steady, needed someone to be around more than either of us wanted to admit. That was why I left reluctantly. Why I had stared at her in bed before leaving for the airport, memorizing the way she smiled and told me, "Go. Your sister needs you." Our son, Nathan, had insisted he'd handle everything while I was gone. "Dad, it's 4 days. I've got this," he'd said. He's 34, old enough, responsible enough, and close with his mother. I trusted him. At least I thought I did. The plane touched down earlier than scheduled, and for once, I was grateful. I wanted my own bed. I wanted Linda's voice. I wanted the smell of our house, the faint scent of pine cleaner she always overused, and the lavender lotion she put on her hands every night before sleep. I texted Nathan as we taxied to the gate. "Landed early. Be home in 40. No response. But I didn't think much of it. He was probably helping Linda get ready for bed. I slung my carry-on over my shoulder as I walked off the plane, feeling the heaviness of the day cling to me. My legs ached, my eyes burned, but the thought of stepping into my quiet home and seeing Linda relax into a smile kept me going. I didn't know that the house I was heading toward wasn't quiet because they were asleep. It was quiet because something was terribly, terribly wrong. It was just after 9 p.m. when I pulled into the driveway. The porch light was off. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Linda always turned it on before sunset. Said it made the house look warm, lived in, safe. I grabbed my bag from the trunk, frowning at the darkness pressing against the windows. The entire house looked still, too still. I unlocked the front door, expecting to hear the television Linda loved her crime dramas, or at least the hum of the dishwasher Nathan was always overusing. Instead, the house greeted me with silence so thick it felt alive. "Linda?" My voice echoed into nothing. No answer. I flipped the foyer light switch. Nothing. Bulb burnt out maybe, but the kitchen lights were off too, and the lamp by the sofa. All of it. The air felt wrong, stale, unmoving, like no one had walked through the rooms for days. Nathan? Still, nothing. A prickle crawled up my spine. I dropped my bag by the door and walked deeper inside, my footsteps unnervingly loud against the hardwood. The living room was untouched. The throw blanket folded the way Linda always kept it. Her water bottle gone. From the side table. No walker in sight. I stepped toward the stairs, and that's when I heard it. A faint sound. Muffled. Irregular. A soft banging, like someone hitting a wall weakly, rhythmically, from far away. My heart thudded. "Linda?" I called again, louder. No reply. The banging continued. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my breath coming quicker with each step. At the top of the landing, I paused. All the upstairs doors were closed. Every single one. We never closed the doors. Not since Linda needed help moving around. The banging grew louder coming from the guest room. "Nathan?" Silence. My hands shook as I reached for the doorknob. It didn't turn. Locked. From the outside. My chest tightened, dread gripping me like a fist. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The banging was louder now, desperate, uneven, like someone hitting the wall with the side of a fist that no longer had strength left. I stood frozen for a moment, my hand on the cold doorknob, every instinct in my body pulling me in two different directions. Fear on one side, denial on the other. Things like this don't happen in normal homes. Not in mine, not in Linda's. But the sound wouldn't stop. "Linda," I called, my voice cracking, despite how hard I tried to steady it. There was a pause. One awful, dead second pause. Then a voice answered. Weak, hoarse, barely audible. "Tom?" Hearing my name in that fragile whisper felt like being punched in the chest. That wasn't Linda's normal voice. That wasn't the woman who laughed like bells and talked a mile a minute. That was someone dying of thirst. Someone terrified. Someone alone. My heart lodged itself somewhere between my throat and my ribs. "Linda, I'm here. I'm right here." The banging stopped abruptly, like she had used up every ounce of her strength just to answer. I rattled the doorknob again. Still locked. Locked from the outside. A guest bedroom door that had never, in 30 years of living here, been locked from the hallway. "Hold on, sweetheart," I said, voice shaking. "I'm getting you out." I checked the frame old wood, original hinges. I could break it. I would break it. I backed up, braced myself, and slammed my shoulder into the door. Pain shot down my arm, but the lock groaned. Once more. Harder. The frame splintered slightly, enough to see the metal latch straining. "Tom," she whispered again, smaller this time, like the sound itself cost her something she didn't have left. Adrenaline surged through me. I slammed into the door again, this time with everything I had. The wood cracked, the latch tore away, and the door swung inward. And what I saw inside made my stomach twist so violently, I almost dropped to my knees. Linda was sitting on the floor near the corner of the bed, her back against the nightstand like she'd been trying to prop herself up and had failed hours ago. Her hair was matted, her clothes were wrinkled and stained. Her eyes, usually bright, warm, so full of life, were sunken, unfocused, darting toward me like she couldn't believe I was real. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just stared, breaths shallow and uneven. The room smelled wrong. Stale air, old sweat, something sour, something spilled and left to rot. A tray with congealed soup sat overturned on the nightstand. A bottle of water lay empty on the floor. The curtains were drawn tight, making the room feel like a sealed box. "Linda," my voice broke. I crouched down beside her, afraid to touch her, afraid she might break beneath my hands. "How long have you been in here?" She swallowed, her lips cracked and dry. Two days. The words barely formed. I thought, "You weren't coming back." My throat closed. "What?" "I told you I'd be home tonight," he said. She blinked slowly, tears gathering. "He said you left, because I'm too much work now. He said you needed a break from me. Nathan." The name hit me like a slap. "Linda, no, 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 sweetheart. None of that is true." She looked down at her trembling hands. "I wasn't good. I needed help." And he got mad. Her voice cracked. "He said I was making everything harder. That I was being difficult." I felt something hot rise in my chest. Rage, fear, disbelief, all tangled into one sickening knot. I wrapped my arms around her gently, carefully, like she was made of glass. She flinched at first, then melted into me with a small, broken sound that I will never forget for as long as I live. "Did he take your walker?" I asked quietly. She nodded against my shoulder. "He didn't want me." Getting out. My hands clenched involuntarily. I forced myself to breathe. "It's okay. I've got you now. You're safe. I'm here." But I wasn't calm. Not even close. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold her. Because in that moment, I knew something impossible, unthinkable, horrifying. My son had done this. My son had locked his mother in a room and left her there. And I had no idea why. I carried Linda downstairs in my arms because she was too weak to stand, let alone walk. She clung to my shirt like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. I settled her gently on the couch, grabbed a blanket, wrapped it around her shaking shoulders, and told her I'd be right back. She nodded, dazed and exhausted, her gaze drifting around the room like she was trying to confirm she was finally out of that prison upstairs. I needed answers. I needed to find Nathan. I moved through the house with a sick sort of urgency, opening doors, checking rooms, calling his name with a volume that bordered on desperation. Nothing. His room was empty, too empty. His laptop was gone, the desk drawers half open, clothes missing from the closet. The charger was still plugged into the wall, dangling like he'd pulled the cord out and walked away mid-thought. In the hallway, outside the guest room, I finally noticed them. 3 food trays stacked crookedly against the wall. One with dried oatmeal, another with a half-eaten sandwich, the edges curled and hard. A third, with a cup of water sealed with plastic wrap. He wasn't feeding her properly, just shoving trays under the door like she was an animal. My stomach twisted. I checked the garage. More missing pieces. A couple of boxes, old documents. Some tools. The small safe we kept emergency cash in were gone. My heart pounded in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Nathan had packed up and left. Fled. I grabbed my phone and dialed him. 1 ring, then voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. By the 4th try, my hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Nathan, call me back. Now. My voice cracked. I don't care what's going on, we need to talk. Your mother is hurt. I ended the call and forced myself to breathe, to think. I went back to Linda. She was slumped sideways, her eyes half closed. We're going to the hospital, sweetheart, I whispered. I'm getting you help. But in the back of my mind, one thought circled endlessly, cold and relentless. Where is my son? And what the hell has he done? The ER lights were harsh, unkind. Fluorescent white, the kind that make every shadow look sharper, every flaw more pronounced. Linda sat in the wheelchair like a wilted flower, her head resting against the side, eyes closed, lips cracked. She didn't complain, didn't ask questions. She didn't have the strength. Nurses moved quickly once they saw her condition. Vitals checked, IV inserted, fluids started. A doctor with tired eyes asked her name twice before she could answer clearly. They ran tests, blood work, urinalysis, neurological assessments. Words like dehydration, elevated heart rate, electrolyte imbalance floated around me like bits of a language I suddenly couldn't understand. Then came the questions. A woman in a gray cardigan, hospital, social worker, badge clipped to her belt, pulled up a chair beside me. Mr. Lawson, she began gently. Your wife's condition suggests prolonged immobility. Has she been confined? Was she unable to leave the room on her own? I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw. She fell recently. She uses a walker. Was the walker accessible to her? I hesitated. Because the truth was sitting in my chest, like a stone. No, her expression didn't change, but something sharp flickered in her eyes' recognition. How long was she alone? I don't know, I whispered. She told me 2 days. 2 doctors stepped in shortly after, their faces professional but tense. Sir, one of them said, your wife is showing early signs of infection, likely from being unable to move or use the restroom properly. Has anyone in the home been restricting her movement? It felt like someone emptied a cold bucket of water over me. What are you asking? We have to ask these questions, the doctor said calmly. For safety. Has anyone been controlling her access to food, water, or assistance? I rubbed a hand over my face. I don't know. I wasn't home. Who was? I forced myself to say it. My son, Nathan. And in that moment, standing under those brutal hospital lights, surrounded by beeping monitors and the antiseptic smell of disinfectant, I realized just how little I understood about what had happened in my own home, and how much worse it might be than I dared let myself believe. Linda didn't speak for hours. Even after the IV fluids began to revive a bit of color in her cheeks, she kept her eyes closed, like she was afraid reality would collapse again if she opened them for too long. I sat beside her bed, my hand wrapped around hers, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor and trying to keep myself from falling apart. When she finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. Tom, there's something I need to tell you. I leaned closer. Anything, sweetheart. Just tell me. Anything. 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 Her fingers twitched in my palm. Nathan. He hasn't been himself. For weeks. She swallowed. He kept bringing up the house, asking me to talk to you, about signing part of it over to him. My stomach dropped. Why? He said he needed financial protection for the future. Her voice shook, the words trembling like they were painful to release. He said, it made sense for you to transfer your share, or at least half of it. Cold crawled up my spine. Nathan had never once mentioned wanting any part of the house. Not to me. Not even in passing. But Linda kept going, each sentence like a slow knife. When I told him no, he got angry. She blinked hard, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. Tom, he was different. Moody. Snapping at me for small things. Watching me constantly. He wouldn't leave me alone in a room for more than a few minutes. I felt my jaw clench. My heart hammered. And then, she took a shaky breath. He started saying things. About you. What things? That you weren't thinking clearly anymore. That you were forgetting things. She flinched. That you shouldn't be making decisions about the house. That he should. My vision blurred. Linda. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. She cried, and the sound cracked something inside me. But he took my phone one day. Said I was stressing you while you were helping your sister. I sat back, numb, but she wasn't done. Tom. Her voice was so small, I almost didn't hear it. He told me he had the right to make decisions now. Because you're getting older. Those words hit like a blow to the sternum. My own son had said that. My son. The child I raised, loved, sacrificed for. And suddenly, for the first time since I found her in that room, I realized this wasn't just neglect. It was deliberate, planned, calculated. A betrayal growing for far longer than I'd understood. The house felt different when I walked back, and darker, heavier, like the walls themselves knew what I was about to find. After settling Linda safely at the hospital and speaking with the doctors, I drove home alone. My mind a storm of disbelief and dread. I needed answers, proof, something to explain the unthinkable. I went straight to Nathan's room. The air smelled like stale cologne and dust. His bed wasn't made. Drawers half open. Closet door ajar. It looked like he'd left in a hurry, but also like he never planned to come back. I started with the desk. Papers everywhere. Notebooks. Folders. And then a stack thick, neatly printed, shockingly organized of real estate transfer forms. My name and Linda's name already typed into the grantor section. Nathan listed as the grantee. There were at least a dozen variations. Different percentages. Joint tenancy transfers. Partial ownership. Full ownership. My hands shook as I flipped through them. Beneath those forms were power of attorney templates. Blank signatures, highlighted sections. Instructions printed in the margins. One page even had Linda's name pre-filled on the document requiring witness signatures. He'd been planning this. All of it. I found more. Financial statements. My statements. Ones I had never printed, never shared. Bank account summaries. Retirement fund balances. Mortgage documents. He had gone through every corner of my financial life behind my back. And then the worst part. A folder labeled simply, Conversations, Advisor. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages. Short, chilling exchanges. Advisor. Did you talk to her, Nathan? She's resisting. Advisor. Make her dependent. Isolate mom first. Advisor. Once dad sees she can't manage, he'll cave. Nathan. He's old. It won't take long. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, my breath leaving me in one violent exhale. My son. My little boy who used to hold my hand, crossing the street, who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. He had been planning to take everything. I stood slowly, the weight of what I'd discovered settling into my bones. That's when I noticed something on the floor beside the nightstand. Small, metal, wedge-shaped, a doorstop, heavy-duty. The kind used to prop or block a door. I picked it up, realization hitting like ice water. He didn't just lock Linda in that room. He made sure she couldn't get out even if she tried. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I never imagined I would feel toward my own son. Fear. My phone rang just as I finished reading the last printed message. The vibration startled me so badly, I nearly dropped the folder. Nathan's name flashed across the screen like a warning. For a moment, I just stared at it, my heart thudding slow and heavy in my chest. Part of me wanted to let it ring. Pretend I didn't see it. Pretend none of this was real. But I needed answers. I needed something, anything to explain the madness he'd dragged us into. I answered. Dad, he said, tone flat, almost irritated. We need to have a calm discussion. My grip tightened. Where are you? Somewhere safe, he replied. Look, you're overreacting. You always do this. If you'd just relax, we could talk like adults. My blood turned to ice. You locked your mother in a room. Because she was confused, he snapped. She kept wandering around, messing things up, trying to leave the house. I was keeping her safe. Safe? My voice cracked, rising despite the effort I made to contain it. She was dehydrated, terrified, without her walker, locked in a room like an animal. She wasn't thinking clearly, he said, frustrated, like I was the unreasonable one. You don't understand what it's been like. She's been slipping for months. Someone had to take responsibility. Rage surged so violently through me I had to steady myself against the desk. So you starved her? Trapped her? Hid her? That's responsibility? He sighed sharply. Dad, you're not listening. I was trying to protect the family assets. You and Mom have no idea how vulnerable you are. You wouldn't even consider my plan. You never take me seriously. I felt something in me break some illusion I'd clung to about who my son was. Your plan, I repeated. Your plan to steal the house? To take control? To isolate your mother? Silence. Heavy. Damning. Then he said quietly, if you'd just listened to me, none of this would have happened. I nearly dropped the phone. The coldness. The entitlement. The complete lack of remorse. Nathan, I whispered, voice trembling, do not come near this house. Do not come near your mother. The police. But the line clicked before I could finish. He'd hung up. And for the first time, I realized my son wasn't just troubled. He was dangerous. By the time I returned to the hospital, a social worker was already waiting outside Linda's room. Her expression a mixture of concern and grim certainty. Mr. Lawson, she said carefully, I need to let you know that based on your wife's condition and what she has disclosed, we're filing an adult protection report. I nodded numbly. I didn't fight it. How could I? Linda lay in the bed, IV, dripping steadily. her breathing shallow but steadier than before. When the police arrived, 2 officers, one male, one female. The social worker briefed them before approaching me. "Sir, we need to take formal statements," the female officer said. "Both from you and from your wife, if she's able." Linda opened her eyes when they gently addressed her. Her voice was weak, but clear. She confirmed everything: that Nathan had taken her walker, that he'd locked her in the guest room, that she'd cried for help until her voice gave out. The officer's expression didn't change much, but the tightening of her jaw told me enough. When the officers stepped into the hallway with me, the male officer pulled out his notebook. "Mr. Lawson, this is being classified as unlawful confinement and elder abuse." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. Elder abuse. My wife. Abused. By our son. "We need to ask," he continued, "has your son ever acted controlling or aggressive before this?" I shook my head. "No. I mean, not like this. He's been stressed, irritable. But this? Sometimes these situations escalate quickly," the officer said. "Based on the evidence you've described, this appears premeditated." Premeditated. I felt sick. The female officer stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "We need to locate your son, Mr. Lawson. There will be charges." My breath caught. "Charges?" "Yes," she said. "This is criminal. We don't take cases like this lightly." I leaned against the wall. The sterile hospital air, suddenly suffocating. My son, the little boy I taught to ride a bike, whose nightmares I soothed, whose scraped knees I bandaged, was now someone the police were actively hunting. Someone who had committed a crime so severe, they didn't hesitate to say the word: charges. And all I could think was how a family could break so violently without warning. How love could turn into something unrecognizable. How I hadn't seen any of this coming. It was the kind of truth that shattered a man. They found Nathan the next morning. He was staying at a friend's apartment on the other side of town, a guy he knew from college. Someone he used to play basketball with on weekends. The detective called me, explaining they'd made contact, that Nathan had agreed to meet at a neutral location. He said I could come if I felt up to it. I shouldn't have gone. Every part of me knew that. But some quiet, aching part of my heart, the part still trying to understand how my son had become a stranger, needed answers. We met in a small conference room at the police substation. Neutral, cold, windowless. 2 officers were there, positioned on opposite ends of the room. Nathan entered last, shoulders hunched, wearing the same jacket he'd worn the week before. His hair unwashed, face drawn with exhaustion, and something darker, something hollow, for a second, when he looked at me. There was a flicker of the boy I knew. "Dad," he said flatly, "we need to talk." I stared at him, at the son I no longer recognized. "Nathan, why? Why did you do this to your mother?" He scoffed, dragging a chair back with a loud scrape. "I was planning for the future. For your future. For the family's future. You're too blind to see what needs to be done." My jaw tightened. By locking her in a room? By taking her walker? By starving her? She was confused, he snapped. She kept messing things up, forgetting things, slowing everything down. I needed you to understand that she isn't capable anymore. That you aren't capable anymore. But you never listen. One of the officers shifted, ready to intervene if needed. "Nathan," I said quietly, "your mother almost died." He shook his head, irritated. "You're dramatic. I had everything under control." 7. Under control? My voice rose despite me. Isolating her? Stealing documents? Planning to take the house? IU. IU. YU. IU. IU. His eyes narrowed. "If you'd just signed the papers, none of this would have happened." The officers stepped in. "Mr. Lawson," one said firmly. "Nathan, stand up." Nathan jerked away. Wait, what? You're under arrest for unlawful confinement, elder abuse, and attempted fraud. He twisted toward me, fury replacing the emptiness in his eyes. I was saving the family. You ruined everything. You! His voice echoed off the walls as the officers cuffed him. And I stood there, helpless, watching my son be led away, realizing the boy I raised no longer existed. Linda came home a week later. She was frail, moving slowly, but the doctors said she'd recover physically with time, supervision, and proper care. Emotionally, that was different. She flinched at sudden noises. She avoided the guest room entirely. Sometimes, she woke at night calling for me, afraid she was locked in again. Those were the moments that broke me. We didn't talk much about Nathan, not at first. The wound was too fresh, too deep, too raw. But eventually, late one evening as we sat on the couch, her hand slid into mine. He didn't used to be like that, she whispered. I nodded, eyes burning. I know. What happened to him? I didn't have an answer. Maybe stress. Maybe greed. Maybe something had been festering inside him for longer than we ever realized. Maybe we'd been blind. All I knew was that I needed to protect her now, in every way. I met with an estate lawyer, then another, then a financial advisor. Together, we restructured everything: trust funds, wills, durable powers, asset protections. We documented everything, every conversation, every step. I made sure Nathan could never again access a single inch of our finances, our home, or our lives. His lawyer reached out once, saying Nathan felt misunderstood. I didn't respond. Some bridges aren't just burned, they crumble into dust. Weeks passed. I focused on Linda, her recovery, her safety, her peace. I cooked her meals, helped her practice walking, sat with her through the nights. She cried quietly into my shoulder. She apologized once, said she was sorry for causing trouble. That nearly broke me in two. None of this had been her fault. One evening, after putting her to bed, I stood alone in the hallway, staring at the cracked frame of the guest room door. The splintered wood was still there, jagged proof of the night I came home and found something I never expected. I placed my hand on the damaged frame and let out a shaky breath. I went to help my sister heal, I whispered into the quiet house, and came home to find my own family breaking apart. I never imagined I'd save the person I love from my own child. And in that moment, in the silence of our wounded home, I finally understood. Healing wasn't just for the body. Sometimes it was for the heart, too. And the heart takes much, much longer. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.